Welcome back, everybody, to Empyrion Galactic Survival. This is the How to Get Started in Empyrion tutorial mini-series. I am an old guy gaming, if I didn't already say that. I think I did. I'm old, right? Forget shit. Anyway, we're picking up right where we left off. Before we get started, though, I hope you guys enjoy this episode, and I hope that you find it useful. And if you do, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. It doesn't cost you anything. It doesn't take any effort, and it certainly helps the channel out. If you don't like what you see, please consider leaving a constructive comment and help me improve. All right, let's pick up right where we left off. I'm really hoping we can get through all of the menus and stuff in this episode and actually get into the action. There's just a lot of stuff to cover, but here again, this is not a quick, here's 5 things that you need to do to get started in the game. Do this, this, and this. Okay, go have fun. This is a detailed tutorial where I'm trying to cover a lot of the starting information that you need to know to really get started in this game and know what you're doing. Okay, so that being said, let's go ahead and continue where we left off. So we were looking at the menus, and we finished with the PDA and the missions and talked about that stuff in the last episode. Now we're going to look at the blueprint shop. Okay, so what this basically is this allows you to create a vessel or a base or a capital ship or a space station, those sorts of things from a blueprint. Really fun, a part of this game. And so to do that, you have to use your imagination a little bit, okay? There is a factory. The factory exists somewhere in the nether. It doesn't actually exist yet, but you just have to use your imagination. But there's a factory, and the factory is what you use to build the vessels and the bases and whatnot. A quick side note, the community, the Empyrion community, wants Elyon to make a real, actual factory. I don't know if they're going to. All I know is we want them to, because, this is a huge, huge part of this game, and it's always just been this nebulous thing out, that doesn't actually exist, but it's a factory that builds shit for us. In fact, I even did a playthrough in Alpha 10, I think it was, where I actually made a rule that I had to build a real factory, an actual factory. I even have it here. Before I could make anything. And so, yeah, so we actually did that. It was kind of fun too, to make that. So anyway, all that to say, for now, until and unless Elyon, brings an actual physical factory into the game, you just have to pretend that it's there. Okay. And that's all we can really do. So your library shows you all of the various different blueprints that are available to you. Some of these blueprints, if you look up in the upper left-hand corner, are your own. So anything that I see when I click on this little personal icon are blueprints that I myself have created. Some of these are red, which means they have blocks in them that are forbidden, either because you just can't bring them in. The best example of that is crops. So you can't actually have growing crops when you blueprint a base, because then when you try and bring it in the future, it won't bring the crops in with it. So you have to always make sure that you remove all crops from a base or a capital vessel before you blueprint it. In some cases, though, the blueprint might contain blocks that are no longer available, that they've been deprecated, that the game doesn't use anymore, in which case you have to update. And there's little admin tricks and magic commands and stuff that you can do, to fix that, but that's way too advanced for this, for this type of tutorial. All that to say, if you want to bring something in, you have to make sure that it is white, that has white and not orange. Or I'm sorry, red. You also might see some items that are orange, and if they're orange, I believe that means that your server settings don't allow it. It's generally an allowed thing that you can make, but your particular server doesn't allow it. So red means forbidden blocks, orange means you can't make this on this server, and white means you can make this on this server. Okay? So yeah, if I want to see all the things that I myself have made, then I just click on this little button here, and it'll show me just my stuff. So I've made a few bases over the years. I've made some hover vessels over the years. I've made some small vessels and some capital vessels over the years, and that sort of thing. And then this just shows everything that I have made. Either that I created directly from scratch, or in the case of like the Pharaoh, I didn't make this originally, but what I did is I spawned it into my game and I upgraded it and modified it to my liking and then resaved it as kind of like my version. Okay, the next button here is basically stuff that you'll find on the workshop. So if you go to the Steam Workshop, one of the things that's really cool about this game is that people make all kinds of really neat ships and bases and stations and whatnot, and you can download those into your game and then spawn them into your game. And so that's what all this stuff is. This is all stuff on the workshop, and it includes my stuff too. So if I have something that I've updated to the workshop, or I'm sorry, uploaded to the workshop, then I can also, you know, find the workshop version of those things here. One example of that is going to be like my Cylon Red Raider, for example. That's a ship that I currently have on the workshop. But it does have some issues with it in terms of like the size class. But again, that's a server setting that can be allowed or not be allowed depending upon what your server is trying to accomplish there. Okay, so yeah, so anything that you see in here is a ship that at one point or another I downloaded off of the workshop, and they stay in my games files, and I can put them in the factory and bring them in if I would like to do so. Okay, and then these are the stock or the prefab ships and vessels that come with the game. So if I had not ever built anything myself, or if I've never gone to the workshop and downloaded anything, I still have access to a variety of ships and bases and stations that just come with the game, that are prepackaged with the game. And many of these, a very large percentage of these, in fact, were originally designed by players, and Elion actually took that design and included it with the game, which is really cool. So, you know, you have a lot of different variety to choose from. One of the things that you want to pay attention to when you're looking at, you know, bringing in a vessel or a base is you want to pay attention to what tier it is. That kind of goes back to what we talked about, I think, in the first episode, where we talked just a little bit about the CPU tiers. So basically, the rule of thumb here is that T1 is the least expensive, requires the least resources, but of course is going to be, you know, the least capable. And then, you know, it goes up to T2 and then T3, and the higher you get, the more expensive these vessels are going to be, and the higher your level needs to be, and that sort of thing. Okay. And then this is just a filter that shows me bases, hover vessels, small vessels, capital vessels, or just everything. And you know, you can also type in here, use a filter if you want to look for something specific. So I have a small vessel that I've made called the J Jet, and if I want to find that quickly, I just, you know, you have to make sure you're on the right filter, and then you just start typing in, and it'll show you where those things are. Okay. Couple things to look at over here. Resources and time, very important. This is telling me what I need to make this vessel and how long it's going to take. And this is in real time. This is not game time. So it's going to take me 2.5 real-time hours for the factory to make this ship with these resources. A couple of things to know. This time is based upon putting these actual resources as they are into the factory to make the ship. You can actually reduce the time, the production time, by feeding whole blocks or already made components into the factory to satisfy the resource requirement. So let's say, for example, I went out to, I just raided a Xerax POI, and I found a couple of constructors in that POI. Well, what I can do is I can actually salvage those constructors. I can pick them up whole, and then I can feed them into the factory, and all of the resources that those constructors required to make will account towards these resources. But more importantly, or at least equally as important, it's also going to then reduce the time. Why? Because the game is assuming that, hey, you know, this constructor already has a motor in it, and it already has a flux coil in it, and it already has a power core in it, or whatever, you know, they're already made. So the game doesn't have to recreate those components. They're already made. So they just take that component and use it as is, and therefore it takes less time to make whatever it is you're trying to make. So that's kind of the logic behind it. You can eventually, if you do it enough, you can feed enough whole blocks or whole pieces of equipment into the factory to get this time all the way down to 0. Okay. Well, old guy, 2 hours and 31 minutes. That's kind of a long time, and it's not a big deal. Yeah, maybe not, but check this out. If I go to my my capital vessel, the Blacklight, look how long that sucker takes. 21 hours of real time, guys, to make that. So it would behoove me to, as I'm going along, to feed blocks into the factory, and you can kind of pre-feed them in, you know, to do that, to apply towards this, so that when the time comes for me to actually make this very, very expensive capital vessel, I could have knocked this time in half, or even less than half, or even all the way down to 0 by just feeding blocks in the factory. Really important to know how that works. Okay, so how do I do that? Well, what you do is you select what it is that you want to make, and then you click the factory tab. And then what you do is you can start the production. Well, no, what you do is you feed stuff in there. Let me see if I can find something. Let's go to, let's do the little stealth. Okay. So what I have to do is I have to click this button to send this item to the factory if I want to make it. Okay. So now what I see is this list here, and it shows what it requires and what's currently in the factory and how long it's going to take. And so as I start to feed resources, and you just click and drag or shift click items into this little box, it starts to feed the resources in. And what you're looking for is you want to make sure that you meet at least this requirement. And when you do, this will turn green. So it'll say, here, let me actually just do a little cheat here real quick just to demonstrate that. So I'm going to go to the item menu, and then I'm going to go here, and let's just grab some copper really quick out of there. All right, so now if I go into the factory, and by the way, I got there from the hotkey by pressing F2. You can find all that stuff in the controls menu. But now I've got this copper, right? And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to put it in there, and notice that this turned green because it's telling me, okay, you have enough copper in here to make this vessel. Now I still have to do the same thing for all the other resources too. And in this particular case, I also loaded a hell of a lot more copper into the factory than I really needed, and that will stay in there and can then be applied towards other vessels or bases later on that I want to use that require copper. Okay, that was a very extreme case because I cheated that in, of course, but that's the principle behind it. All right, look at my guy. He is low on food. I see this little red apple icon in the lower left-hand corner, and my food progress bar is red. That's not good. When I get that low on food, I start having problems. One of them being that, yeah, see, it says you feel very hungry and find something to eat. So it can cause problems like slowing you down, and if it gets too low, you'll actually die, right? So you want to try and avoid that as much as possible. And so I've got these protein bars. Now there's two ways I can eat protein bars. I can eat it directly from my inventory by holding down the shift key and right clicking. Okay, see, my guy eats one of the energy bars, and my bar down here went back up into the yellow. Or I can put the item on my toolbar and then just left click to eat it that way. So that's the two ways in this game that you can consume food or beverage or whatever it is that you're trying to consume, medicine, that sort of thing. Okay, I'm just going to eat all of these to try and get my food back up so we can just keep going on with the tutorial. If I was playing this game for real, though, by this time, I would have definitely gathered stuff to make more food, which we're going to do once we're done messing around in the menu. But let's finish that first. Hopefully we can get to that in this game or in this episode. Okay, so we were looking at the factory. There's a few more things about the factory that we could talk about, but I think I've shared enough information with you to get you started with it. Okay. Pay attention to all of this information on the right-hand side. It's telling you what level you have to be before you can make this. So that's significant. That kind of bit me in the ass a few times before, because it's like, okay, I want to make this ship. So I get all the resources and get ready to make it. And then I realize, oh, crap, I can't make it because I'm not a high enough level yet. Tells you the size class. So the size class is a numbering system that indicates, how large a ship is and or how advanced it is, I think, in terms of its equipment. This is important because there could be a limit on your particular server on the size class. So the admin or the owner of that server, you know, might put a restriction on that, so people can't just bring in these ginormous, you know, ridiculously large ships. Okay, so you know, pay attention to that. So if that's red, that means that the server currently does not allow that class of a vessel into your play or onto your server. Okay, you can override that with admin commands in a single player game if you want to, but by default there are limitations on the single player game too. I think let's go back to the library for a second and go back to the blacklight. Okay, so technically speaking, with the default settings of the game, this ship is too big, too large of a class for the game to allow it to be spawned in. But because this is a single player game, I can just spawn it in anyways with like an admin command. But if I was playing on a server and I saw this, that means I can't do it. I can't use this ship because the size class is over the limits of that server. Okay, so pay attention to that. Pay attention to the size of a device, or not a device, a vessel or a base. It might be more applicable to a base. If you want to spawn a base in and you want, you know, you don't know quite how large it is, well, it tells you right there. This is in blocks. So, you know, pay attention to that so you know how large this thing is going to be. How many blocks, how many devices, how many lights are on it, triangle count. That's not really super practical for the actual player, but it's just kind of a number to, I believe, indicate the complexity or the geometry of the particular device. So this has a pretty high triangle count because there's just all kinds of different shapes and blocks on here. So this is really an indicator of, you know, the complexity of the geometry of the vessel or the base. That was kind of a mouthful, wasn't it? This tells you the class this is a T4 ship, and if the person that built this ship made sure that it is at 100% efficiency. Okay, that's important too when it comes to the CPU efficiency. I mentioned this in episode 1 when we were talking about the game settings. If you have a base or a vessel that is below 100% efficient, then that means that the base is not going to run at 100% efficiency. Okay, yeah, duh. But what's the practical application of that? The practical application is, let's say that I have some turrets on my base, and I've gone overboard, and now I'm only running at, say, like 75% efficiency, which is really bad, by the way. I'm not saying you should do that, but let's say I did do it. And sometimes this can bite you in the ass too, because, you know, you might build an advanced constructor and put it down, and if you don't pay attention to how much CPU an advanced constructor uses, which is a lot relatively speaking, you might have knocked your efficiency down to 75%, not even realizing if you're not paying attention. The Xerax come along and they try and take over your base, and you're saying, I don't have anything to worry about because my turrets are going to shoot those bastards out of the sky. Well, guess what? Your turrets might not work. Or maybe only one of them will work. Or maybe they'll only fire at half the rate they normally would fire at. You see what I'm getting at? So you really have to be careful that you keep your CPU efficiency at 100%. The game will actually reward you if you do keep it at 100% or above. It'll actually give you a little bit of a bonus in terms of power, and maybe other things too, but in power in particular, gives you a little bit of extra power than your base is really capable of doing, as long as you're staying efficient. So it's rewarding you for being efficient, energy efficiency, that sort of thing. Okay, guys, I think that's really all to show you right now about the factory itself. Yeah, so let's go ahead and move on. This little guy up here is, this, what the hell is this? I can't even remember what that is. All right, guys, I am actually on my multiplayer server right now to show you the trading interface. So that's actually what this button is. It's only available in multiplayer. And apparently to initiate it, it's not something I think I've ever actually used this. I knew it was in the game, but I just kind of forgot that that's what it was for. But it's basically the marketplace. So I believe to initiate this, you have to be in a trading station. So I'm in a Polaris trading station right now, and you have to come up to this terminal thingamadoodle and then open it up. And then what you can do is you can trade with other players. That's what it's all about. It's about trading with other players as opposed to the AI. So that I can either create a buy order here or a sell order, and then I can also see, you know, what's been recent and what's pending. So let's just kind of look at this together. Keep in mind, again, I haven't used this before, so I don't know everything about it, but I think it's fairly straightforward. So if I want to buy something, so let's say I want to buy some, well, let's just do an advanced constructor. We can put like a transportation cost. So I guess what that means is I will pay like 10% more for them to bring it to me, maybe, or something. I'm not really sure what that means. But anyway, maybe I'm willing to pay like 10,000 credits for it, right? And this is how long I'm willing to buy, you know, keep this on the market. So, you know, I don't know, could we do like 5 days? Maybe it looks like we can. And apparently you also have to have the money to actually put that up there. So you're putting, oh, okay, I see what's going on. So yeah, you've got to actually pay for it in advance, and then some, you know, if somebody fulfills that order, you apparently get the constructor, and then they get the money. So that makes sense. Okay, cool. So that's basically the buy orders, and then of course the sell order is probably exactly the same thing. I imagine you have to have stuff in your inventory or in your ship, maybe, to sell this stuff. I don't know. But let's say I wanted to sell like the hot beverage. So I got one of those. I want to sell it for 5 credits, and it's available for 10 hours. And then create the sell offer. If you want to sell for 5, the market sales fee will be, which cannot be refunded. Okay, so apparently the game charges you a fee. And there we go. So we've got the hot beverage for sale up on here, and it looks like I can abort this offer at any point in time. And then I'm assuming pending means, you know, if you have sold something, or if somebody has bought one of your items. Well, that's the same thing. Or if someone has provided an item that you wanted to buy, they must show up here, and then you claim them here, is my guess. And then recents, I guess, maybe a log of all the transactions that you've done recently. So anyway, yeah, that's what that is. It's just kind of funny because, you know, that has actually been in the game for a long time, for several alphas, as a matter of fact, and it's just something I have never actually used. So anyway, that's what it is. It's for trading with other players. This is called the Registry. What the Registry does is it basically shows you all of the things that you have discovered. This thing's going to fill up as you go along and you discover new things. So in our case, we have discovered the wreckage, which is just right over there, because we got close enough to where our passive scanner, you know, that's just kind of built into our suit, you know, discovered it for us. And so I can go back and see all of the things that I've discovered as I've gone along in the game. And then, you know, depending upon what it is and where it is and that sort of thing, you can do a few things with that. So you can see statistics, for example, about this particular item. Or let's go back, or I can see where it's at on the map, right? That sort of thing. So I can also set a waypoint on it, right? So now that I've set a waypoint on it, you can see that it has a waypoint set. Wait, didn't it already have that though? Waypoint. I'm not sure why that's not waypointing. I'm probably doing something wrong there. Because that little pin thing is not a waypoint. That's just what the game shows once you discover something. Well, there's another way you can do waypoints, and I'll show that. I'm not quite sure what I'm doing wrong there. But anyway, the whole point to the Registry is it shows you what you've discovered. If this is an item that you own, you can actually get into its control panel, you know, and do a couple of things with it. If it's something that you own. Now, I don't own this wreckage, so it's not letting me do anything. Over here on the left-hand side, you will see the star system that you're in, and then the planet that you're on, or moon, or Playfield, and then below that, you can see the items. This is important because as you go along, this is going to fill up, and eventually, you know, hopefully you will have visited many different planets, and so, you know, you'll have to figure out what system and what planet you're actually trying to find something on. So here's where this could be useful. Let's say, for example, that I have a moon base. Let's say that I have a moon base, in fact, that is in 3 solar systems away from where I'm currently at. And I want to check the fuel level in that moon base, right? Well, what I can do is I can find the system that it's in, find the planet or moon that it's on, access it, and then go into the control panel and see what the fuel level is in that. I kind of got to the control panel in a backdoor way, but basically it would tell me what the fuel is. So very useful, you know, for those, you know, that type of usage. So this is called the registry. Okay, next we have the map. So we have 3 levels of map. This is the map of the playfield, the planet, the moon, whatever it is that you're currently on. Okay, this is the map of the solar system that you're currently in. And you can use your mouse, you know, to move around and zoom in, zoom out, you know, pan it and that sort of thing. And then this is the map of the galaxy. So this is really cool because if you guys didn't already know this about Empyrion, and this is new to Alpha 12, and one of the best things they've ever done in this game is we now have a full galaxy, you guys, with different star systems. And each one of these stars that we see is a star system that we can travel to. It's not on the ridiculous scale of, say, like No Man's Sky or Elite Dangerous, you know, where we're talking millions and billions and billions, but there's thousands of star systems that we can visit, and for all intents and purposes, there might as well be a million, because who in the hell is going to actually visit 1,000 star systems, or thousands, I should say, of star systems in a single playthrough? I suppose it's theoretically possible, but for all intents and purposes, you know, you're never going to get to every single solar system, and these are all procedurally generated based upon your seed, so keep that in mind too. In a single playthrough. It's just not practically going to happen. Later on, though, when you have a capital vessel that's capable of using hyperspace or warp, then what you can do is you can start traveling to these different solar systems, and then you have a whole nother system with a whole nother set of planets and moons and POIs and playfields and so forth that you can go to. Really cool. So the scale of the game is you know, it is on a galactic scale, so really fun. Okay, anyway, so let's look at the map stuff. This is the map you'll probably use the most because it actually shows the playfield that you're currently on. Territories, basically, red is Xerax, green is Talon, yellow is, or I guess actually more like orange is Polaris, yellow is Pirates, purple is Creel, Traders is light blue, Legacy is kind of a light purple. The Legacy, I don't want to say too much about them because you'll find out about them if you go through the story mode, but you really kind of have 2 main main enemies in this game. You have the Xerax, which we've already talked about, and then you also have the Legacy. They're kind of like the spooky aliens, okay? In fact, they used to actually be called that, aliens, just aliens, but now they're actually called the Legacy. And they're bad news. They're even more dangerous overall than the Xerax, and you will run into them as you go through the game. But again, I don't want to give anything away in terms of the story, so you're just going to have to kind of find out about the Legacy as you go along. Right, in the map, a couple of things that's really important to be aware of. This basically tells you the time, where you're currently at, and it also shows your coordinates. So these are the coordinates of my player right now. But notice that if I click on the map, then it also shows the coordinates of the place that I clicked and how far away in meters that location is from where I'm currently at. So that's pretty useful information to know for navigation and whatnot, to know what those coordinates are. Okay. The first coordinate is going to be your east and west coordinate. The second coordinate is going to be your height, so like your y coordinate, and then the third coordinate is going to be your north and south coordinates. Okay, so it's important to know about this, especially where I've really found this useful. In fact, I just finished doing this in the Let's Play series. Is I dug a long, very long vertical tunnel straight down into the ground from the top of a mountain and then out the side of the mountain for the base that I'm on. And so in order for me to do that, I kind of needed to know in particular what my y coordinate was, but I also needed to know, what the x and z coordinates were too, in order to, make sure that I dug the tunnel in the right position, so to speak. So that's one place where that can be really useful. Okay, let's take a look over here. Planet information tells me the type of planet, the name of the planet, the size of the planet, how difficult it is, how much gravity it is, what the temperature is, the radiation, if it's breathable, all that sort of thing. So we kind of saw this when we first started the game, but this just lets me look at that stuff again. Pay really, really close attention to the gravity, you guys, because we talked about this too in the first episode. There are some planets in this game, lava planets in particular, but it can be other ones too, that have a really high gravity. And if you're not careful, if you don't have a ship with enough thrust, you could enter that planet and you'll never get back out. You'll be stuck there forever. You'd have to probably kill yourself and respawn to get off of it, essentially. That's actually happened to me before, and it sucks. It really sucks. So just make sure you don't just, oh, there's a cool planet, let's go check it out, without paying attention to the gravity. And you also want to pay attention to the temperature, and you want to pay attention to radiation and whether you can breathe there and that sort of thing too. Those things are also important, but the gravity is the one thing that can really wreck your day if you're not paying attention and you get onto a planet that has more heavier gravity than your ship is capable of, of lifting off from, of it re-entering the orbit. It's not just that either. If you land on a planet with really high gravity, you're not going to be able to move very well yourself. You can generally walk around, but you can't jump. And your jetpack is almost useless or greatly diminished, I should say. Here's an example of this. On our multiplayer server, fairly recently, we landed on a planet that had, I think it had like over 3 Gs, 4 Gs, something like that. It was a really heavy planet. And our ship itself didn't really have any trouble with it because we were in a pretty capable capital vessel. But what happened is we got out of the ship and we went out and did whatever it was we were doing. We shot some aliens, gathered some resources, whatever. And then when we came to get back on the ship had, like a lower, a ramp in the belly that lowered down to the ground that we could walk up. We couldn't walk up the ramp. I mean, literally, we could not walk up the ramp because the gravity was so heavy on that planet. We had to, kind of use our jetpack and keep trying to where we finally, eventually were able to get on the lower part of the ramp and then have the ramp itself closed to raise us up into the ship to get into the rest of the ship. It was really crazy, but all that to say, you have to really be careful of that. It's no joke. When you're on a heavy gravity planet, make sure that your ship can handle it and be really careful yourself if you get out and walk around on that planet, because if you don't have like a jetpack booster, you could be in trouble. You really could. Okay, anyway, this tells me the resources on the planet. So this tells me that I have 8 iron deposits, I have 6 silicon deposits, I have 6 copper deposits, etc., etc. We got promethium, and we even have 1 gold deposit on this planet. This tells me what meteorites I will get on the planet. All right, so we talked about that in the first episode too. If I mine out all of the iron on this planet, if I completely deplete the iron resource, what the game will start to do is it'll start to throw meteorites down to the planet, iron meteorites that I can then go and continue to mine. That's really cool when that happens because these are easy to get to and very quick to mine, and you can get a lot of resources really quick. The reason the game does that, by the by, is because it's really almost more important for multiplayer, because if you have a lot of people playing on the same planet, they could very quickly exhaust the resources, and then if you get a new player that comes along and wants to play on that planet, there's no more resources left. So this is how the game handles that, by sending those meteorites. But you will only see them once you have exhausted nearly all of the deposits on that planet. Where I practically use this, especially in a single player game, is on the moon more than on a planet. I'll go to the moon, I'll exhaust all the promethium resources and all the pentaxid resources, and sometimes the magnesium. And then what will happen is the game will start sending, promethium meteorites down to the moon, and then I mine them, and I've got more promethium than I know what to do with. Of course, in order to do that, I have to have a capital vessel, and I have to be able to bring a hover vessel, a drilling vessel up there to do that. I mean, you can drill them by hand too, but it's far, far better to use an actual drilling vessel for those meteorites. And then finally down below, it just kind of gives you a description of the planet. Again, the same information that we saw when we first started the game. Okay, finally, over here we've got a map marker. So this is how you can set waypoints. So let's say that I wanted to actually set a waypoint on this wreckage, or maybe I want to set a waypoint on a certain POI that I want to come back to later and raid, or some, whatever you want to do, really. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hover my cursor over the item. I'm going to right click, and then I have this little window that pops up that allows me to put in a map marker. So I can rename it if I want to. Sometimes I'll put a temporary waypoint up and I'll just name it go here. And so I know which direction to go in. Or you can name it, whatever you want to. Raid this later. Or if you don't want to do any of that, just use whatever its actual name is and it'll just say wreckage. You can choose what icon you want to use. That's just purely a visible thing. I'll typically use this little crystal icon, for a mineral deposit that I want to mark. I'll use the house for a base that I want to mark. I'll use the target if it's an enemy base, that sort of thing. But it doesn't really matter. The game doesn't care. You can just choose whatever icon is appropriate. And then you want to set waypoint, and then you can choose if you want it to show up on your HUD or not. This is important because as you go along, your HUD's going to start to fill up with all this stuff, and it is in fact kind of a problem with the game in its current state, to where you actually start getting all this crap on your screen. Your sky fills up with all these things that you've discovered, but those are registry things that you've discovered. Your own map markers or waypoints that you can put, those you can turn off and on your HUD as needed, and you probably will want to turn these off when your screen starts to get a little bit cluttered. Now, there's two things I can do here. I can set this as a waypoint if I want to, and I can also choose whether or not I want the waypoint to disappear when I get to it. That's really useful if, this is a temporary waypoint. If you don't click this, then it's going to stay there permanently until you remove it later on. So once I've set all that stuff up, I click accept, and then it shows up here in my map markers window. Okay. Once I've set a waypoint, I can show where it is on the map. I can edit it. I can delete it if I want to, but I'm not going to at this moment, but this is how I can delete it. I can share this waypoint with everybody on the server, or I can share it just with my faction. Obviously, these two things don't matter in single player, but they do matter and are useful on the server. If I am playing on a server and other people have shared waypoints, what I want to do is go up to here, and this shows private waypoints, and this shows public waypoints that have been shared out, okay, by other people, right? So, yeah, that's basically how your waypoints work. Okay, there isn't really anything else to show you on this map. This is your solar system map. So you can move around on the map by holding the left mouse button. So basically you can tilt or pivot. The right mouse button will allow you to pan. And then the mouse wheel will allow you to zoom. And the... what is the... Oh, there you go. If I hold down Shift and then press the left mouse button, then I can actually rotate the view. Okay. So yeah, that's a solar system map. Basically, you can see other planets or points of interest in this solar system. And when I hover my cursor over like Kai's moon, for example. Now, Kai is a gas giant, the planet itself. And obviously we can't go to a gas giant, but we can go to the moon, right? So if I hover my cursor over Kai's moon, then it shows me some information. Notice that you see this yellow dashed line that says 6.4 AU. What that means is it is 6.4 astronomical units from Filzel to Kai's moon. So that tells me basically the distance, the warp distance that I need to get from here to there. And then if I'm going to warp to this, which I can do in a small vessel with a warp engine or a capital vessel, I just need to make sure that I have enough fuel, that I have 6.4 astronomical units, or probably more importantly, that I have 12.8 because I have to get back, right? Of fuel in my warp fuel tank to get there. Okay. Okay, don't worry too much about exactly how that works. We'll get into all that stuff later, but all I'm showing you right now is this is how you can tell what the distance is from where you are to where you want to go. Okay. Now, if I click on Kai's moon, or if I click on Lee's moon, or one of these other points of interest, and select it, the map will automatically center on that first of all. And then we have some information that we can see about that, right? So this little icon here is just general information about the map itself. It tells you how to move on the map. It tells you what the different warp lines mean and what their distances are, how to move the camera around, stuff that I've already covered, or some of it I've already covered. So you can read that later. But this allows you to toggle the orbit lines. I usually keep those on because they're kind of cool. This will toggle off and on the actual warp paths in this system and their distance. Okay. I usually keep that off. And then the info panel will bring up information about the playfields in this solar system. Okay. So this is just a list of all of the different areas in the solar system. And it's another way, to select those items, as you can see. And this basically is the same as the map marker, only it's a solar system, but it works exactly the same as it does on the planet. So I can, create a waypoint if I want to. This allows me to, well, this is actually this list view. This is a system information view. So what this does is it tells me information about this star itself. It's a G-class star. It's a yellow star. What the temperature is, how bright it is, that sort of thing. This tells me information about the sector or the area of space around Lee's moon itself. And one of the more important things that I want to pay attention to here are the resources, okay, that are available. And then this gives me information about the actual planet itself. Now, what's the difference between the resources? These are asteroids in orbit around Kai's moon, right? So I can see that I have a magnesium asteroid, a cobalt asteroid, a neodymium asteroid, a pentaxid, and a titanium. Whereas this little tab, remember, this is orbit information now, right? This little tab shows me planet information. So this is the information that's actually on Kai's moon itself. And again, I want to pay attention to gravity. I want to pay attention to radiation. Moons typically have fairly high radiation because of the fact that they don't have atmospheres, or they don't have a significant atmosphere. So you got to really watch that. Make sure, that you have a spacesuit on, and that you have potentially a radiation booster if you need to, and an EVA boost when you're in space, that sort of thing. Stuff we'll cover later. Don't worry too much about those details yet, but just know that you got to pay attention to that stuff. And then I can see, what resources deposits are actually on the moon itself, and a brief description about that particular moon. So this applies to whether it's a moon or a planet, or, a playfield. So these are kind of like little asteroid clusters or belts that you can go to. And it shows me the resources that are there and whatnot. Okay, so that's pretty much how the solar system map works. Really useful information for sure. And then finally, we have the galaxy map. Same kind of ideas here, but in this case, we're looking at things, at the galactic level now. So if I want to select this star, then I can bring up the info panel about the star itself, see what type of star it is, that sort of thing. See what I guess it doesn't tell you what playfields are there until you've visited there, which kind of makes sense. And then map markers that you can make for that particular system. If I am in a warp capable capital vessel and I have enough fuel, this is the menu I would go to travel from one star system to the next. So if I wanted to travel to Islay Delta, for example, I would select it. I would click lock target. I would get out of the map. Remember, we're in our capital vessel, and then we would go off into hyperspace and warp to Islay Delta. Okay, this shows me territories. Let's look at that actually for a minute. So territories, basically, I'm zooming way the hell out here. I think if I do a double, hold both mouse buttons down thingamadoodle here, I don't know, maybe that doesn't work. I was just trying to see if there's a quick way to zoom. Anyway, this shows you, the various faction territories in the galaxy here. Let's get that out of the way. So you can see that this red area is Xerax Empire space, right? This light blue area is the Traders Guild. This orange area is Polaris. The big purple area is the big, bad, scary legacy alien area. Don't go there in the early game. Not advisable. And yeah, just whoops, and just shows, you know, the different territories here on the galactic map.